This is a really good one, and this happens a lot, and I don't know if it's something we addressed on the show or not. Parent wrote in, said, I have a child who wants me to co-sign for an apartment when they move away to go to college. What do you think? Red flags went up all over the place on this one. You got a lot to think about here, a lot to think about. And when I first thought about it, it was like, uh-oh, and then it just kept rolling and rolling, because you're looking at everything goes fine, no problem. I'm trying to figure out what the potential problems and pitfalls are, because this is something that's going to affect the child going forward as well as the parent if there's a cosign. So let's say, for example, the child wants to move to an apartment complex. Well, if they're over 18, they have the capacity to sign a lease. But usually they want a personal guarantee who's going to say, hey, if this kid moves out after 6 months, we want somebody who's going to pay the rest of this lease off. Yeah, they won't be, I mean, they can pursue the kid, but what are they going to get? Probably nothing. So really what you're going to look at is the long-term aspects of signing this lease. Now, let's say the rent is, I don't know, make something up, $600 a month, and it's a 12-month lease. So you're looking at being on the hook for $7,200, assuming the child doesn't sign the lease and assuming that this doesn't happen. I mean, they don't fulfill the terms of the lease, excuse me. First and foremost, you want to look at the level of responsibility of the child about whether or not you want to do this. Number two, and if the child's level of responsibility is super high, again, they got skin in the game, they know their credit's going to be risked, they're going to go to school, they're going to work, they're going to pay as much as they can. Fantastic. High level of responsibility, again, just one thing off the list. Are they going to have roommates? Are those roommates going to be on the lease? I, for one, don't want roommates on the lease. If my child's going to go, I want a one-bedroom apartment where they can live alone. But if you want to sign a lease with like 3 people, it's just the cost goes up, the amount of problems goes up, everything, well, I'm a little leery on that. So I would prefer there were no roommates. Length of time of the lease, let's say it's a 12-month lease, which is pretty standard. I'm okay with that. Number cost if they don't pay. Here's a little bit of a problem. Let's say, for example, 6 months goes by and the kid wants to move out. Well, then you've got $7,200 divided by 2 is $3,600 that you're still going to be on the hook for. So my advice would be is if that's going to be true and there's going to be a co-signing going on, you'd want to take that amount of money, if you can afford to, put it in a separate bank account. Just slide it over to the side and write it off. If you get some of it back, good. If you get all of it back, you hit the lottery. If you get half of it back, good for you. You're still way ahead of the game. If you get none of it back, you took a risk, it didn't work out, but at least your credit's still good and your child's credit hasn't been hurt. So, I mean, that's it. And these rules, these same rules apply to everything. But if, let's say, for example, it was a credit card loan that you're a credit card you're co-signing for, or a car payment that you're co-signing for. Here again, you want to be a little bit more leery. I wouldn't want to have a car loan out there that wasn't being sent to my house. I would want that, basically that monthly payment coming to me. I know it gets paid because it's not only my credit on the hook, it's the child's credit, and I want to make sure that if he or she can't pay it, I will, so that it's not nobody's really being affected by it. Again, and the same thing too, if you're going to lease a car, you want me to co-sign a car, you're living under my roof because I want to make sure that I'm watching over that car, make sure nothing's happening to it. And again, I don't want anybody really, other people driving the car either, because it always seems to me that as a personal injury attorney, things happen when something else happens. And we had a recent accident in our house. Her boyfriend was driving the car, and not that he did anything wrong, I'm not saying that. They got hit from the rear, and he was driving the car. And luckily, there was no really bad injuries. I mean, they were both hurt because of the impact of the car. It was really bad. But, there's nothing you can do about that. I'm not saying that. What I'm talking about there is a situation where you let somebody else drive your car that may not be the most responsible person in the world or something else. And then it gets kind of dicey. That's a totally different subject than what happened at our house. But again, you just want to be real careful of that. Because if your credit's going to be on the hook and your money's going to be on the hook, I like to use the word skin in the game. You have skin in the game and you need to be watching out for yourself. Even if it's your child and they have a high level of responsibility, you still want to keep your little hand over it. Just make sure everything's going the way you want it to go. And that the bill's being paid and that you're teaching responsibility, you're teaching good money sense to your children or to the co-signer. It may be a niece and nephew, maybe a grandchild for that matter. But you definitely want to keep your hand in the pot stirring it. Okay?